here's what I believe. And some of you wouldn't believe this, and I totally understand why. And if we were sitting down talking, you'd argue with me about this, and you'd have good reasons, I'm sure. But I don't know why everybody wouldn't want Christianity to be true. I don't know why, whether you're a Jesus follower or not, I don't know why you wouldn't hope it was true. Now, maybe not the version of Christianity that you grew up with, maybe not the version that your church when you were a kid taught you or that the denomination had and was presented to you. Maybe not the version that hurt your parents or hurt you in such a profound way that you just walked away from faith. Maybe not the version of Christianity that wasn't open to all your questions, and when they did have answers, they had really bad answers to your questions. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the original, authentic version that Jesus introduced to the world. I don't know why everybody wouldn't want that version to be true, because at the core, at the heart of that version of Christianity is a concept that all of us want. It doesn't matter if you're a Jesus follower or not. All of us find ourselves at times in life longing for this thing that's at the very heart of what Jesus introduced. And it is the thing, by the way, that reassures us that God is with us and he's for us. It's the thing that reassures us he's leaning in, he's not leaning away, that when God's pursuing us, it's not to pay us back for something, it's to win us back. At the core is this idea that actually solves all the guilt and all the shame that so many of us carry from different things at different points in our lives. And yet, as odd as it is, there's something in us that when we run into this, we still have a tendency to resist it. And so for the next few minutes, I just want to talk about why that is. This is week 2 of a series we're in called Simply Amazing. If you weren't here last week, I normally don't say this, but if you find this interesting at all, you should go back and listen to last week, because we laid the foundation and began to explain what this concept is at the core of Christianity. It's the one thing that really has a potential to change everything for all of us. It is this simple idea of grace. Now, I'll give you a very basic definition of grace. Grace is when you get something you don't deserve. And we have all experienced that in life. We may not have used this terminology, but we all have gotten an opportunity we knew we didn't deserve, or another chance that we knew we didn't deserve, or somebody gave us an act or an expression of kindness that we knew we didn't deserve. And while we didn't necessarily say it that way, what we were doing is we were receiving grace. We were getting something we were certain we did not deserve. And that's certainly true when it comes to our relationship with God as well. The thing I would say is it goes a little deeper and a little further when you think about what grace looks like between you and me and our Heavenly Father. In that aspect, I would say grace is this. It is simply the unearned, undeserved, unexpected goodness or favor of God, however you would want to say that. It's unearned. You can't earn grace any more than you can plan your own surprise birthday party. I'll let you think about that for a second. And you'll be like, oh yeah, because the minute you plan it, it's not a surprise anymore. You misnamed the birthday party. It's a birthday party you plan for yourself. It's not a surprise one. In the same way, the minute you think you've earned grace, it's not grace anymore. Like you lost it. Because by definition, grace is something that you are getting that you absolutely have not earned and you absolutely do not deserve. But I think this is why we resist grace when we bump into it sometimes. Because everything in our nature wants to earn and deserve what we get. And that's actually good in a lot of places and in a lot of realms. In most of life, you want to earn things and you want to deserve things. But when it comes to your relationship with God, the minute you try to earn or deserve, you're in trouble. The minute I think I can earn it and I deserve to get that from God, well, then it's just not grace anymore. But we resist because to say I can't earn it and I don't deserve it, to acknowledge that requires a lot of humility on my part. And yet the minute I can acknowledge it, the minute I'm willing to humble myself enough to go, there is nothing I can do to earn or deserve what I need from God. Well, at that moment, it becomes incredibly unexpected in a really good way because it's right there for us. The thing that we thought there's no hope I'll ever experience that. Well, that's the thing that you begin to experience in a really personal way. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't know, that doesn't sound fair to me. I don't know that I like that because, and I get this, we all have a tendency, even though we're like, I don't know that I totally earn it or deserve it. We want to compare ourselves to people and go, well, I can't earn it all, but I've earned some of it. I mean, I don't deserve it all, but I think I deserve for God too, compared to, and we start looking at other people, thinking about other people, naming other people, I'm not that bad. And if that's you, and if you feel that resistance because you're like, that's just not fair, that it's unearned and undeserved and everybody's on a level playing field, well, you can kind of understand why the religious leaders in the first century had so many issues with Jesus, because that was one of the big tension points for them. And so what I want to do today is I want to take you back to a story that I think will help all of us understand the resistance we feel internally, but maybe begin to process why it's better to let go of that resistance and to embrace grace instead. So if you were a Jew, here's some context for you. If you were a Jew living in Jerusalem in the first century, one of the things that would have been a common part of your life is at least every week, and maybe more often than that, you would have grabbed a sacrifice of some kind, an animal of some kind, a pigeon or a goat or sheep or whatever. This is just part of Judaism, it's part of the temple process. You would have grabbed an animal, and you would have thrown that animal, in a cage or on your shoulder, however it was. And you would have headed to the temple, and you would have walked right up these stairs right here. This is a modern day look at it. This is where it's been excavated. These were called the Southern Stairs, so they're not super impressive now. But back then, they were about 210 feet wide. That kind of tells you how many people would come in and out of the temple every day. You would have walked with your animal right up through here. You'd have gone through a gate there into the temple, and you would have met with a priest, and you would have made your sacrifice. And their terminology would have been, you would have been atoning for your sin, which was your way of saying, God, I'm showing up here. I'm admitting I did something wrong, and I'm offering this sacrifice as a way to make sure everything's good between us. Will you forgive me and not hold against me this thing I did? That's how you would have handled it. And that happened in Jewish circles all the time. So when Jesus shows up in the first century, he often would walk these southern stairs and he would walk into the temple. But here's what was odd. He never brought a sacrifice, and he never taught the people that they should sacrifice, or there was a better, that they should get better at sacrificing. Instead, Jesus taught them about grace over and over and over again. And it was so counterintuitive for them in terms of the way they were living. So at this particular moment in the story we're about to read, there is a Jewish festival going on. That was a big Jewish festival. So all of these people from out of town, these Jewish people from out of town, have come into Jerusalem. So now there are tens of thousands of people in the city. The temple's going to be packed. And John, who was a friend of Jesus, watched what happened one day as Jesus not only taught about grace, but as he modeled grace and demonstrated grace in a way they never forgot, that John wanted all of us to know. Here's how he began. He said, At dawn, he appeared, talking about Jesus, in the temple courts where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. Now, if you knew all the context of this, you would realize just how shocking this was, because the day before Jesus had been in the temple, he'd been teaching about grace, doing the exact same thing. And the religious leaders had actually sent the temple guard, think temple police, okay? They'd sent the temple police to arrest Jesus because they were so frustrated with what he was teaching. It seemed so counter to Judaism, their religion, that they were like, just arrest him. Let's throw him in prison over here. We don't want all these crowds during the festival to be able to hear him and, get all worked up by what he's teaching. So the police had gone to arrest Jesus. Only when they got there, there's a huge crowd. Thousands of people are listening to him. And they start listening to him, and they get so into what he's teaching that they stay there all day long. And at the end of the day, they're looking at each other like, well, we're supposed to arrest him, but I don't know. That made sense to us. And if we arrest him, I think we're going to get a riot from the crowd anyway. These people love him. So they went back to their religious leaders, to their bosses, and the religious leaders are like, well, where is he? And they're like, well, have you ever listened to him? No, what are you doing? We don't want to listen to him. That's the whole point. And they're like, well, you should listen, So anyway, they're like, we just couldn't do it, So the religious leaders spend all night coming up with a plan. They realize we have to turn the crowd against Jesus because we don't want to riot if we arrest him. We got to turn the crowd against him so everybody will be excited we arrest him. So they come up with a plan all night long. And the next morning, when the sun came up, the temple opened up and Jesus is already there and thousands of people are there. It's busy, it's packed, there's a lot going on. Jesus is teaching again, and this is where the religious leaders, as soon as they see Jesus, they're like, okay, let's get our plan going. And here was their plan. John goes on to tell us the teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery. And imagine this. They made her, John said, they made her stand before the group, and they said to Jesus, teacher, this woman was caught in an act of adultery. There's no denying it. There's no debate. Like, she's guilty. She's guilty. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew even you, even if you're not a church person, you've heard the 10 Commandments, and one of the 10 Commandments is do not commit adultery. Pretty much everybody in America knows that. So you couldn't deny that, okay? You couldn't argue it. Everybody knew she was guilty. But I always think when I read this story, what in the world would it have felt like to be that woman? How humiliating this must have been with thousands of people standing around. And she's dragged in front of them all. She'd probably walked those southern stairs plenty of times. helping with, preparing for some sacrifice. But on this day, she's dragged up those stairs, and it had to have felt to her like she was the sacrifice, that these religious leaders are going to use her just to get what they want and to make a point. And that's exactly what they're doing. Once they drag her in front of Jesus and get the attention of the crowd, they ask Jesus this question. They said, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Well, that got intense quick, didn't it? To stone such women. Now, what do you say? What do you say, Jesus? And their thought is this. We're going to put Jesus in such a difficult position that he ticks the crowd off either way. If he says, no, don't stone her, well, he has disrespected Moses and the law. That's going to make the crowd angry with him. If he says, yes, stone her, he has incited violence, which will get the attention of the Romans, and then they'll come down on him, and that will also make the crowd angry. So basically, they're putting Jesus in a catch-22. John actually tells us this. He goes on to give us a little insight. He said they were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. So they think he's caught. They're like, we're going to get what we want. Either way, the crowd's going to be angry with him. Then we'll arrest him, and we'll put an end to all of this teaching. But instead, Jesus did something they didn't expect. John says that Jesus bent down when he was asked the question. He started to write on the ground with his finger. And they're like, no, you're not going to avoid this question. You know how sometimes you do things to try to avoid a question you don't answer. They're like, we're not letting you get away with that. So John says when they kept on questioning him, Jesus finally said, all right, I'll answer. He straightened up, he stood up, and he said this to them. He said, let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. This was such a brilliant response. He says, okay, your law says a stoner, stone her. But how about whichever one of you has never had to grab an animal, put it on your shoulder, walk up those southern stairs, go meet with a priest and make a sacrifice for your sin? How about you be the first one to pick up a stone and to judge her? Now, here was the irony of that. There was only one person in the crowd that day who actually met the requirement to be able to do that. And it was Jesus. He was standing there. He was sinless and he was stoneless. I'm not even sure if that's a word, and that could mean a lot of things, but we're going with it, okay? He was sinless and he was stoneless. The one man who met the requirement to say, I'll make you pay, chose not to do it. Instead, he just set it out there for them to consider. And John says again, he stooped down. He wrote on the ground. And they began to see what happened. So John says that those who heard talking about the religious leaders began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. And you wonder how relieved she must have felt, but how nervous she must have been, because she knew who Jesus was. She knew he met the requirement to judge her. But Jesus, John says, Jesus straightened up. He asked her, woman, where are they? Has nobody condemned you? Now, just so there's no confusion, condemned here does not mean guilty. Everybody knew she was guilty. She knew she was guilty. What Jesus is asking is, has no one forced you to pay for what you did? Is nobody choosing to punish you for your sin? And she looked back at him and said, no one, sir. At least not yet. Still waiting to see what you're going to do. And then Jesus said something that was so unusual, that was so unheard of in their culture. He was introducing a brand new concept none of them had ever fully grasped before. He looked back and he said, well, then neither do I condemn you. I am not going to make you pay for what you've done. I am not going to punish you for your sin. Now, just real quick and we'll move on. But for those of you, maybe you grew up in church, or maybe even you didn't, but you got this sense that you're a really good person. This is what bothers us sometimes. Because they're like, whoa, well, you ought to pay for that. Somebody ought to pay for that. Look at who they hurt and look at the mess they made and look at all the people that impacted. Somebody ought to pay for that. That's not fair. This is what goes on internally in us, isn't it? That's not fair. It shouldn't work that way. That's not fair. You shouldn't just, if you let them off the hook like that, Jesus, you're just going to keep doing what they're doing. But Jesus was trying to help us understand grace actually is not fair, but it is really, really good. And you don't want fairness any more than I want fairness. If we think we want grace to be fair, that means we do not understand the depth of our own issues that we need grace for. We don't want God to be fair. We all want grace. And this is Jesus' way of saying it doesn't matter who you are or what you've done. You're all on a level playing field. You all equally need grace. And it's available to everybody. It's really, really good. Then neither do I condemn you. And then he said this to her. He said, neither do I condemn you. Now go and leave your life of sin. All right. You're getting exactly what you don't deserve. You're getting grace. Now go. You're free from all that, but go and don't fall into the trap again. Why in the world would Jesus say that? Well, because John, one of his best friends, at the beginning of this account, John, who'd spent so much time with Jesus, you know how he described Jesus? He said he's full of grace and truth. Full of grace and truth at the exact same time. And so while Jesus always offers grace, he also always offers truth. Because Jesus knows something that all of us end up having to learn the hard way, even though he tells us. He knows that your sin and my sin comes with consequences. So this was his way of looking at this woman and going, listen, I'm not going to make you pay for that. I'm not punishing you for that. But I care about you way too much. I love you way too much. Not to tell you, hey, why don't you leave that behind? Because what you did is going to have consequences that keep catching up with you because every sin comes prepackaged with a penalty. God's not punishing you. Your sin's just getting you. So he's going, don't keep doing that and stacking up consequences you're going to have to deal with. Grace forgives you. Now just go leave your life of sin. That's what grace and truth looks like. So what I want to do is I want to ask you a question. And I'm doing it with as much grace and truth as I know how. This is not a let's make you feel bad about yourself question. But it's a question that's worth all of us considering. It's personal. What's your sin? What's your sin? What is the behavior that's currently in your life, the choice that you're currently making, that's keeping you from experiencing the love and the purpose God has for you? What's that thing in your life now, or maybe it's in your past and you've just never owned it and dealt with it? There's a barrier to Jesus becoming personal to you and you experiencing a better life. Now, if you're anything like me, when I see this question, I want to avoid this because it makes me uncomfortable to stop and think, what is it? But I want to encourage you to wrestle with this for a minute, not to run from it. Nobody else can read your mind, so just be honest with yourself for a minute. What would come to mind for you? What's your sin? What's that thing that you have justified or rationalized or said, oh, it's not a big deal? But it's carrying consequences that are going to kill relationships in your life. They're going to kill your closeness with your Heavenly Father. It's going to impact the people you care about. It's going to hurt you. What is that? Let's just start with the story. Maybe for some of you, it's adultery. You've never owned it. You've never dealt with it. You've hidden it really, really well because you're smart enough not to go to a Coldplay concert. Stay off of Kiss Cam. So you're smarter than some people. But the consequences are the same. It's still going to catch up to you eventually. It's still hurting you and the people around you. Maybe for some of you, it's pornography. Maybe for some of you, it's choices with your sexuality that you know are out of line with God's design and you just don't care. You've convinced yourself you're good. Maybe for some of you, it's just a lack of integrity. That You are at a stage in your life where you are making choice after choice to be dishonest or unethical simply to get your way. You'll say anything and you'll do anything to get what you want. And you've convinced yourself it's not a big deal, but that lack of integrity is just killing you. It's killing your relationships. Maybe for some of you, it's jealousy. It's envy that you think is justified and it makes perfect sense, but you know deep down inside, no, this is hurting me and it's hurting the people around me. Maybe for you it's greed. None of us see greed in ourselves. This one's really hard to say, oh yeah, that's my sin. But this is true for a lot of us, because greed is simply the assumption that everything I have is for my own consumption. Greed's just when you live your life and you're just going to do what you can do if it's going to benefit you. I'm going to use everything I have for me and I'm going to take care of me. You never prioritize somebody else before yourself. And you don't even realize what that greed's doing to you and to the people that you care about the most, who live and interact with you. For some of you, it's pride. It's pride that shows up in the form of arrogance. And man, everybody feels it and everybody knows it. Everything's got to revolve around you. Everything's got to be about you. You're better than everybody else. For others of you, it's pride that shows up in the form of insecurity, because you just don't feel like you're worth enough and everything. You're like, how does that pride? Well, in both cases, whether it's arrogance or insecurity, who do you think about all the time? You. So that selfishness, it's killing you. That selfishness is keeping you from having the kind of relationship with God or with people that you would actually thrive in, that you would want most. What's your sin? Now, here's what I want to invite you to do for the next few minutes. I want to invite you to do something that feels a bit scary and you may not be sure about. But I want to invite you to trade your sin for Jesus' grace. I want to invite you to take whatever it is that you're thinking about from your past, from your present, that you've never owned, and to say, okay, I'm ready to leave that life of sin before I deal with any more consequences from it. So Jesus, I'm going to walk into the light, so to speak. I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to quit hiding it. But I'm doing it knowing you're going to give me grace in return. I need that forgiveness. I need that fresh start. I need that power to change and to live differently. Now, if you're sitting there going, I don't know exactly what that looks like, how do you do that? Well, the way you trade your sin for Jesus' grace is through this simple word right here, confession. The band's going to come out, and in a second, we're going to do a song that reminds us of the power of this. It's going to give you an opportunity, a moment to process whether you want to trade your sin for Jesus' grace. But here's why confession matters so much. Confession is me saying the same thing about my sin that Jesus does. That's all it is. It's me getting to the point where I go, okay, I'm tired of making excuses for this, explaining it away, convincing myself and everybody else it's not a big deal, it's fine. I'm ready to leave that. And so Jesus, I'm going to come and acknowledge that is a problem, and that's killing me. It's killing my relationship with you. It's killing my relationship with people. And I'm going to give it to you. That's what confession looks like. And then confession looks like this. You go to somebody you trust and you say, I got to tell you something I've been hiding. And it may be some external behavior or it may be something internal, an issue just in your heart. But you go, hey, I'm ready to leave that behind. And I just want you to know so you can encourage me and help me. You just tell somebody you trust. You take what's in the dark, the secrets you've been holding, and you drag it into the light, because secrets lose their power in the light. If you're thinking, why would I ever do that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because confession is an expression of humility. And you know what James, the brother of Jesus, and Peter, one of Jesus' best friends, both wrote in documents and letters in the first century? They both said the same thing. God resists the proud. He gives grace to the humble. Grace flows down. It never flows up. Not because God's angry with people who are proud, but when you're proud, you think you can earn and deserve something. So do I. And then we cut ourselves off from grace, because it's not grace if you can earn and deserve it. So they said the same thing that Jesus taught. Why don't you just come with humility? And why don't you confess to God and to somebody you trust? Because you're going to get grace. And you'll get the help you need to leave those choices and that sin behind. So you don't keep stacking consequences. So you don't keep dealing with the pain that comes from it. Is grace fair? Absolutely not. But it's really, really good. And it is available from Jesus for every single one of us. So before we sing, would you pray with me? And I want to give you a moment, just to, if you're ready, just to talk to God. Just to say, Jesus, I'm ready to trade this. What I need more than anything else is grace and forgiveness, your love. And I didn't know I could have it. I want to give you my sin, and I'm going to embrace your grace in return. Would you just tell him that right now? Father, we are so grateful that you would offer us grace freely. Jesus, we don't deserve it. We know we don't. We know we can't earn it. Thanks for giving it freely. Would you just help us to take whatever it is that's inside of us, whatever it is that we've been carrying around, whatever the sin is that's hurting us, and offer it to you so we can get that grace in return. Just to bring it into the light so we can be free. It's in your name we pray. Amen.